Good morning and welcome back. It's your guy, Seth Garu Baxter with Maker's Bar, and we're extremely pleased and honored in having our guest with us today. She is a SLP. She's also the founder and owner of Token Clothing Company. She has a rich history of experience that we're going to dive into a little bit today, as well as 2000 Miss Wyoming, which is part of the journey here as well. Please welcome with me for the Maker's Bar audience, Kimberly Wilkerson. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great, and it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Kimberly, there's a couple of different ways I'd love to engage in this conversation because you have such a wealth of experience. But what I'd like to start off with is your origin story, where from the time you were a child to now. If you can take us a little bit through that journey.
Sure. It is quite a ride. I will say that, right? But I always remember, even as a young kid, having big dreams, honestly. And I think a lot of young kids do. And mine dream at that time was probably more typical of a lot of young kids. I wanted to be an astronaut, right? I remember
oh, yeah.
Camp, and I'm like, I want to be, at that time, this will show my age, but I wanted to be the first female shuttle commander because the United States of America didn't have that yet. And I just fell in love with the idea of space, and I loved science, and I loved the idea of flying. And so what's interesting about that, because I had that dream for quite a long time, I saw it actually helping me shape some of the decisions of my life. I remember in junior high school actually talking to a counselor asking, well, what classes do I need to take to get into the Naval Academy? You know, he's like, well, you're 13. I don't know that matters exactly right now, but I'm like, well. And so he was great. He said, well, let's look at this and this in way of science. And he also was able to connect me with someone from the Naval Academy who actually, this was in the paper and pen days before we had cell phones, but she was, this woman would send me letters. And so again, I made really good decisions as a teenager because I knew that to get into the Naval Academy, I had to be sharp. I had to be involved. I had to have a clean background. And so it really helped guide my direction of my decisions in life. And that changed, that goal and that dream changed, but it was okay because the preparation, even as a young person, that I had done to prepare to potentially go to the Naval Academy, then helped create a foundation and platform that helped me be able to walk through other doors. And so even though that dream changed, it really prepared me to move forward. One of the other loves I had was with music. I sang, I did a little bit of dancing, I played the piano, and I loved acting. I did a lot of musical theater. And so I thought, well, maybe this is right. I mean, that's very different from wanting to go into aeronautical engineering and become an astronaut. I recognize that. But I pursued that for a little bit. And long story short, I ended up in college going back to my love for science while still doing things in musical theater and dance, which was fun. But my first degree was actually in agricultural communications, which
wow.
What do you do with that? I'm like, I teach cows how to tap, right? But I loved public speaking. And as you mentioned, I was Miss Wyoming 2000 in the Miss America Scholarship Organization. And I was a public speaker for a year, and I really enjoyed it. And so with that degree specifically, it was a matter of being able to communicate in behalf of the agricultural community. It really was a great field for me, but I knew that I wanted more. I took some time away from school to serve a mission for my church. And when I came back from that mission, I knew that I wanted a graduate degree. And so I actually pursued at the beginning a graduate degree. I was looking at dance and movement therapy, trying to combine something that I loved with dance and music, but doing something that would benefit others. And that it just didn't feel exactly like the right fit for me. But that led me towards the field of speech pathology, which I knew as I started schooling in that it was the right fit for me. And so I started graduate school in that. But while I was sitting in graduate school, sometimes in the margins of my notes, I was drawing fashion designs. And they were not good fashion designs from an art perspective because that was not a talent that I had. But nonetheless, I really knew that I wanted a fashion company one day, which was interesting because I was paying a lot of money to sit in this graduate program and knew that I wanted to do that too. And so I thought, well, you can do whatever you want, Kimberly, just keep moving forward. So through these last 15 to 20 years being an SLP, along the way, as I tried to build acumen in that clinical field, I also took classes in art, since I really was not a good artist. I took classes, I did study on my own and took classes in light and texture and color and various things like that. I started looking at the world a little bit differently. I could look at a tree and create a dress image in my mind. Now, again, I couldn't get it on paper very well, but I just started paying more attention and being observant of those things around me. And so, still not knowing what that fashion company would look like, I knew that I wanted to move forward regardless of not knowing exactly what it was supposed to look like. And we got to, of course, 2020 and COVID happened and all of those things. And I had this opportunity to head down to the US Virgin Islands as a speech pathologist, which would have been a really fantastic treat for me because I love to scuba dive and snorkel, love the ocean. But I also felt strongly, if I did that, it would be a good decision, but the trajectory of my life would change. And I might not be able to launch this fashion company that I was thinking about. And so I decided, I just felt it was time. And so I'm like, I'm taking this leap. I'm moving forward. The US Virgin Islands can wait. They'll always be there. But this company opportunity might not. And so I took the leap forward with prototyping, et cetera. There were a couple of years to get everything going. And then in October of 2022, Token Clothing Company launched. And what is interesting and was interesting about that, when I determined to move forward with this, I didn't know exactly the line that I would bring forward first. I didn't know what this company would look like until I started getting in the nitty-gritty of it. And as I was looking back at these years of notes and drawings and just a collection of things that I had been studying, I saw a lot of words on all of the drawings that I had done. Some because I needed to explain what that design looked like, but also because I'm a word person, right? Being a speech language pathologist, I understand the power of communication. I understand the neuroscience and the positive psychology behind words, along with the scientific pieces of speech language pathology. I had always also looked at the neuroscience behind thinking and the positive psychology pieces that help us understand how our thoughts really impact our mental health. And so I thought, okay, how about if Token Clothing becomes a platform that allows us to edify our mindset through fashion? I don't see that happening. Certainly, there's lots of graphic tees. I'm wearing one of our graphic tees today, and there's lots of graphic tees we see that are great from other companies, but I thought I want that to be the niche of this company. It's more than fashion. It's about how we improve our mental health, how we edify our mindset, and how we also, in the process, are able to lift others. And so that is why we launched our first line, which was not the graphic tees. It was actually a set of pajamas, which, because this was COVID, that it was kind of the golden era of pajamas. So that was a wise decision to do. And we started with those pajamas with powerful affirmations that were printed on the interior side of the pajamas, so they actually lay against your skin. Options for a reversible top. And with those pajamas, just like with the graphic tees, they were designed so the wearer, as they look in the mirror, can read that powerful language. But if I'm looking at you, Seth, and even with this tee, and also if I were wearing my pajama top inside out, you would also be able to read that powerful language. And so it's a matter
I
of
just love that.
Uplifting your mindset, but making sure that you uplift the mindset of people in your space. So there it is in a nutshell.
Now, and I just love the idea that you can have it against your skin as a constant reminder of the positive affirmation, as well as the person who is looking at you can also read that affirmation. I just think that is absolutely incredible. I'm very curious, though, does the token name come in there somewhere with the designs? Where did you come up with the name Token Clothing Company?
That's a great question. Again, I'm a word person, right? So there was a lot of thought into every single piece of this. Token actually is a word that I found in the scriptures. I'm a woman of faith. And as I was reading, this was years ago, long before I ever launched this company. So on my vision board for years, I had a picture of a woman who was dressed in a fun outfit, and underneath of it was Token Clothing Company. And when we think about the word token is representative, right? Token can be used in a few different ways, but a token is something that is symbolic and representative of something else. And so in our designs there, the words are I am, because I am is a phrase of creation. It's symbolic. It is in the scriptures. It is the title of Jehovah in the Old Testament. And again, when we say this word, I am, I always say whatever follows I am follows you, right? And so
Oh, wow.
yeah, taking something that is symbolic of who we are and allowing that to intertwine with the decisions and the actions that we take, the decisions we make, the actions we take, then that becomes who we are. It becomes our destiny. And so there was a lot of thought into the company's title.
And it just is fascinating because often it's used, have a token of my appreciation. Here's a token for you to remember me by. And I love words, as we spoke of, Cameron, as well. And so sometimes the weight and importance of words are not seen or embraced as often as possible or as I would like. And token clothing just sounds incredible, and it sticks with you. Now, is your clothing primarily made for women?
It is at this point, and teenage girls too. We don't have necessarily a teenage line. We have a teenage journal line, the Journal of I Am for teenage girls. But I have had moms buy pajamas and tees for their teenage daughters. So yes, we have not branched out into men. I think that would be fantastic. We just have to grow and bring on people who understand men's design better than I do. So.
Absolutely. Now, with your belief and spirituality, I often ask the question, how does spirituality play a role in our companies and in our organizations? Can you elaborate a little bit how it plays a role for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, certainly my entire focus of wanting to spend the time and energy into a company like this is directed and influenced by my faith. Every entrepreneur understands business is hard, right? There are just roller coasters, and there are days certainly that have been along this journey where I have thought I should have just gone to the Caribbean and been an SLP. This is so crazy. This is hard. I give up so much time when I could be off playing and I'm working on business. So you really have to love what you are working towards building. And for me, and this has been true, I think, my entire life with anything that I've done, I've always looked at the greater purpose. And that is connected directly for me to God and how I believe that we're all his children. And so with this company, with Token Clothing Company, it's a matter of being able to lift and edify people throughout the world. And one of the things I love about taking the platform of fashion and merging it with language is that because there are so many different languages throughout the world, I can take this as I partner with larger companies and we can put it into Mandarin. We can put it into Russian languages. We can take this clothing and we can put it into the languages that will benefit that area of the world. And so again, it's all about raising and edifying and bringing greater light to the world. When we say I am, and again, according to those things I believe as a Christian, I believe, as the New Testament talks about, when the Savior Jesus Christ says, I am the vine, ye are the branch. I think about the implications of what that means. And I want people to understand the power of these words of I am, the power of creation. And for me, it's about bringing people closer to their identity as children of God.
I think that is absolutely beautiful. And I see the positivity, not only in bringing an awareness to the spirituality of it and recognition of we as God's children, but how powerful that can be as a self-reflection when you look in the mirror and you wear one of your clothing items and you see that and it's reinforced. And I don't know that people can sometimes immediately embrace that, but with your clothing line, it becomes a regular habit. And I myself, in knowing the importance of words and how they bring life to people, I just find that this is one of the most encouraging things that I've seen. You have an interesting offshoot in your pajamas as well. Please explain to us a little bit about your pajamas.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an initiative called Pay It Forward with Pajamas. And I knew when I launched this company that I wanted to have a philanthropic side to it. And so within a few months, as I was thinking about what I wanted to look like that, I started thinking about the most vulnerable populations or demographics that we might have who could benefit the most from the pajamas that we had. And it occurred to me that women who have been sex trafficked would be one of those demographics. And so I started reaching out to a few different organizations, and I happened to talk extensively with Refuge for Women, which here in the United States is the largest organization for long-term rehabilitation of women who have been sex trafficked. And so I created this initiative called Pay It Forward with Pajamas, where customers can come to the website, to that page, and they can see the names of the people who are part of Refuge for Women. And these women do not share their stories. What they share instead, which I think is more important, are their hopes and their dreams, despite what has happened to them. And so a customer can then gift a pair of pajamas to these women. But more important than that, or as important to that, I think, is they can also, in the process of checking it out, write or type a personal note of encouragement to these women.
Oh, wow, Kimberly, that is incredible.
Thank you. And then Token Clothing, of course, is able to fulfill that and send that set of pajamas in their behalf, as well as that personal note to that person. So that is what we're doing right now to help and lift those women who have overcome incredible odds and incredible situations and still have dreams and hopes in this life.
Now, the Refuge, please repeat the name of the organization so we can have that clear on here. And we'll be sure also to put a link at the end of this so people can know where to be able to get in touch with you and or see how they can offer support. Yes. But the name again, please? It's
Refuge for Women.
Refuge for Women.
Yeah,
I think that's incredible.
Yeah, they are in a few, they have homes, again, this long-term rehabilitation centers, and there are homes in, I want to say, maybe 6 to 7 to 8 different places throughout the United States. For these women to be able to go through, again, a long-term program, so they're able to heal and they're able to gain skills and come out and fulfill those dreams.
I think that's exceptional. How long has Refuge for Women been around as an organization?
You know, that's a really good question. I need to have that answer. I don't have that answer right now. They've been around, I know, for several years, and they have grown, in, of course, since their inception, being able to help more and more women with the different centers that they have around our country.
We definitely want to be in touch with them. I'd like to make sure we get the clear message on the organization, how we can further support those efforts as well. What I'd like to jump back into related to that is you and I had a conversation, and you were just tagging on that about the importance of words to our psyche. And we mentioned about the psychological impact on that. Can you delve a little bit deeper into some of the examples of your shirts and your wear, and reinforce some of the messages or elaborate on how those messages are communicated to some of your customers and the people who go to your site?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I shared this example with you, Seth, and this is really interesting, and this is based again on neuroscience research. But if I were to show you a 2-letter word quickly, if we were to put probes, you know, on your brain and your body in a functional MRI to see what's going to happen to your body when you're looking at specific words, here's what we would see and what everyone listening would see. If you saw the word no repeated a few times, we would see your heart rate increase, your blood pressure increase with that single 2-letter word. And sometimes we need to say the word no, right? I mean, that's an important word that we learn as young kids, and that's a good word to use at times. Nonetheless, it still is also a negative word. When we see or hear that word, we go into that flight, fight, or freeze area where we're like, okay, what's my next decision? And so, of course, physiologically, our body responds in these ways to prepare us to act next, which again, in some circumstances is really important and even can be life-saving. However, if we are exposed to negativity, negative words, negative images over and over and over again, those physiological responses that happen in our body create chronic stress in our body. Right? And there's a lot of data and science to show what happens sometimes with anxiety, with depression, with other physical issues that lead to heart issues and other things that stress creates. When we look at, and again, we don't need to go into all of the medical pieces behind this, but when we look at why we get sick, physically sick, it's because of what's happening in our cells at their level with stress. And so we don't always think that, hey, what I'm taking into my body, not just with food, but, you know, mental and emotional food, what I'm reading, what I'm observing, what I'm listening to, is not just impacting from a thought perspective, but it's also impacting me from a physiological perspective because everything is related. So then what happens when we listen to and receive the positive? What we see again with functional MRI is that things calm down in our brain. So that means that those processes in our brain that help us function are really they can be at their optimal level. And that's what we want. We want clarity. We want calm and peace so then we can go forward and make good decisions. We also know, so that's just one piece of it, but we also know that as we work on affirmations, on positive language, being able to talk about things in a way that are really important and positive to us, that can actually help reduce anxiety. There, again, are studies, and I pointed this out. There's a white paper that we published last summer.
Yes.
Yes, that talks about that brings some of those studies talking about affirmations and words and what that can actually do. And certainly those studies, I would say over the last decade and a half, and maybe even a couple of decades, there has been more and more, because of the mental health crisis we have in our nation and our world, where more things are coming to the front and fortunately being understood and then practiced by all of us, right, in way of those things that we can do to help calm our minds and keep more positive thoughts, whether that's journaling, whether that is saying affirmations, whether that's meditation, yoga, those types of things. And so this is just the reason for this clothing company is because it's one more piece that will help us be able to calm our minds, be able to change and reframe that negative language that we have flowing through our minds into something positive. Because you know what, when I was getting ready this morning and I was standing in front of my mirror, I could read all of this. I also have this on a small little poster on my mirror in my bathroom that I also read through, right? Because it literally, the energy of these words and what they're doing to our brains sets the tone for the rest of our days. And so it's important. I always say that affirmations and language and thinking about language isn't something that you do once a week, right? Just like food, we don't eat just once a week. We eat every day. It's the same thing with what we're taking into our minds. We have to make sure that we are nourishing our minds so we can produce those things that we want to throughout our day. I mean, I could go on and on, but we have limited time. Well, I'll stop there.
I got to say, it's fascinating. And again, I know it's trendy to some extent these days to hear about meditation and positive words and so forth. But I don't know, as well as you've just put it in, we understand that the importance of taking pause and assessment at the words we use to each other and to ourselves, how significantly they impact our mood and our health. And it's so, I think it's overlooked too easily due to the fast nature, the rapidity of everything and how that's going. So how do you face the challenge of today's society, be so used to social media and the impact of, just here's these good words? How do you face the challenges in combat with social media, or in competition rather with social media, with the positivity to slow down of the message of your clothing? I hope I said that clearly.
Yeah, well, so you're talking about like the competition because there's a lot of things that are happening on social media that we're constantly scrolling through it. Is that right? Yes.
I think I jumbled up the question, but yes.
Oh, no, that's fine. So one of the things that we talk about in the journal, so it's not on the clothing, right? I can't write an entire journal on a piece of clothing, but it is on the website and the community that we're developing. So that journal of I Am for teenage girls, which women can use to, I use these strategies and practices. I just made sure I wrote it to teenage girls so they're interested in it. One of the things that we have to do is become aware of our thoughts. So here's an example. We can be able to, whether it's social media or another platform, be able to look at it and have tons of positive words around us, which is a good thing. However, if we don't know what we're thinking about, it's not going to have the same impact on us. So here's another really interesting piece of research that came out of Canada a few years ago. They looked at what they call thought worms. And a thought worm is perhaps a thought or a phrase. For example, today the sun is shining. That would be one thought worm because it's one thought, one phrase. Today the sun is shining. And they looked at approximately how many thought worms we have as human beings a day. It's about, as adults, about 6,200, which seems like, we're not always thinking about what we're thinking. And so that's a lot. And then they looked at, and they had criteria for what was negative thinking versus positive thinking. And they said approximately 80 to 85% of those thought worms were negative, whether it's negative about ourselves, whether it's negative about a situation or another person. And what's more staggering than that is those thought worms, almost 90% of what we think is repeated day after day. So if 80%, I'll go on the low side, if 80% of our thoughts are considered negative and we are repeating 90% of those thoughts every day, that's staggering, that there is that much negativity that we're not even aware of that's going on inside our mind.
It is staggering. It's incredibly staggering.
And so how do you combat that? You have to become aware of what you're actually thinking. And so that's one of the strategies that we teach in that journal, is how you can do this. And I have done these things myself, where I have taken a notebook, and I do this in a whether I'm working or doing other things, but I just start to be more aware of the thoughts going through my mind, especially during those quiet times. As I'm speaking to you, what I'm thinking about is what I'm saying. But if I were typing on my computer, listening to music, doing something else, I guarantee you there might be other thoughts coming along. And so I would have that notebook, and I would just write down the thoughts that came. Specifically, maybe not, hey, today the sun is shining, but anything about myself, any I am statement, or you are. Oh, you're so dumb, Kimberly. Why can't you get this? Now it might be positive. Wow, I did a good job on that. I'm going to write that down too, because I want to see the positive as well as the negative. When I have done this, there is definitely, has been, I should say, because I really have worked on this, more negative. And so what I do with that is I look at that statement that's negative. Let me take the one I just used. So, wow, I'm dumb. Why can't I get this? I would cross that out, and next to it, at the end of 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever I give myself, and so I have, 100 thoughts or so, I would cross it out and I would reframe, or what I call refashion, because I'm a fashion company. I would refashion that thought into something positive, the opposite. Instead of saying, I'm so dumb, I can't get this, I would say, I am intelligent and I can solve any problem put my way. And I might even expand on that, right? I'm able to find the right people and the right resources to help me with every problem that I'm not able to figure out immediately. I just create this narrative and these phrases that are incredibly positive. And then what I've done with that is I have taken those thoughts before, and I have recorded them on an app that I have, where I listen to that in the morning. I have written some down on affirmation sheets that I read every day, depending on maybe the severity of the thought, what I'm working on at that time in my life, what I feel that I need. All of that can change, and it's fluid. But that's one way to really combat what's happening up here, is that we have to actually become aware, which I think why meditation is something that is so touted still. And you're right, it is trendy, but it's also something that's been used by Eastern civilizations for hundreds and even thousands of years, because they recognize the importance of that. You have to come into a state of stillness in order to be aware. And that doesn't mean that you have to be completely alone or on a meditation mat for 2 or 3 hours a day, because you can have those meditative awareness moments. You take 60 seconds, or you take 5 minutes, whatever you can take to really become aware of what's happening up here. And then again, take that, keep the good stuff, pat yourself on the back for it, and don't judge yourself for the negative stuff. Recognize part of being a human being is opposition, and be grateful that you're understanding how to overcome that opposition and improve and reframe that negative language into something that is powerful and positive.
So the goal is, because I've been reading recently, reacquainting myself with Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And it's so spiritually ironic and coincident that we would say this, because he would, of late, this is what he's been discussing as well, is taking a moment to slow down the process. For me, as I mentioned to you just before we jumped on here, I usually have my tea, and in the morning, And that's when I have my quiet state to become aware of what I'm thinking, to reinforce all those good things and have communication spiritually with God. For me, that's how I become aware of my thoughts. And Napoleon Hill, he was mentioning, one of the things that we do is be conscious of that and reframe it, similar to what you were saying. And I find so interesting the link in there to our spiritual positivity, our spiritual food that helps to get us motivated throughout the day. One of the important elements that he was talking about was that pausing, being still. We know also that in meditation, that is one of the reasons why so many people enjoy that or partake in that. So being still and becoming aware of our thoughts, seeing when the negative thought worms come in, we call them thought worms.
Yeah, like those phrases. Yeah, and it could be one word, but oftentimes we're speaking to ourselves. We're either saying you are this or I am this, even though we're not saying it right verbally. Those thoughts are typically in our mind, and we're talking about ourselves a lot.
And so the reinforcing, that's one of the incredible things about your shirts as well. The reinforcing of the positive message is what we're using, the shirts are used for, to have a constant reminder of that. Now, give us some of the expressions of words that are on your t-shirts. I am successful, I am powerful, with some of those examples.
So with the T's, there's actually 5 phrases. So it is, I am strong, I am divine, I am worthy, I am beautiful, and I am loved. On the pajamas, so our pajamas were our first line. And when we designed those pajamas, we used some market research from women. I think I had put 8 to 10 different affirmations that I had done some research and study on that I knew were popular. And I put those, when the research that I did with women, I said, choose 3. What are your top 3? And what's interesting is that data started coming back. The top 3 remained the same, as well as the differences between first, second, and third place. Mm-hmm. And the third place, I'll start with third, for those pajamas was I am beautiful. Second, I am worthy. First, I am loved. And that was far out ahead of every other affirmation, I am loved. So when we created the T's, we could add a couple of more. And so we added the next 2 that were strong from that research. But I think it's really interesting that, again, those top 3, I am beautiful, I am worthy, I am loved. Those are the phrases that women wanted to hear and believe, with I am loved, right, being the number 1. And I think when we look at history, when we look at our current situation, when we listen to songs, when we read books, everything is about love. And again, if we look at the spirituality piece, my belief that we are children of God, that He loves each one of us. We want to feel loved, right? That is, as a human being, that is our very nature, is to feel and also to offer love. And so it made sense to me that specific affirmation would lead the rest. But we forget at times, and some of us have experiences that almost seem counter to being loved. And so that phrase itself is really important, because my belief is that even if you do not feel loved by someone else in your life, your Father in heaven loves you, and you are loved regardless of that.
That is so powerful. And I'm so glad that I even in that moment could feel how important that radiated to those who will be watching this. I am loved. And it is an extremely needed and necessary term to be hearing these days. I don't know that enough people feel that they are, even if they feel like they have no one. I'm of the conscious belief to always let someone know, because sometimes they don't know they are loved, and they're going through life not feeling that. But it is by creation, by design, we are born and we are loved as the person who is born. And it's just one of the most important messages I think that people can convey to one another, that we are loved. I even say at the end of each broadcast, the revolution we want is the love-olution. And it's the revolution of love. And I can't value enough of how that is. Tell me some of the challenges you had to face as a founder and a CEO of the company. What were some of those challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Sure. Again, every entrepreneur knows is like there's multiple things that happen, and you are shooting from the hip a whole lot. So but you're learning the whole time too, which I'm grateful for. So one of the interesting things is that when I worked with my mill, which was in LA, in actually producing the fabric for the pajamas, they had never done a project like mine where they were typically with anything that has any graphics on it. It's always on the exterior, right? Not on the interior. So the pajama material was this beautiful French terry modal combination. I purposely chose fabric that would last a long time, that was soft, that draped beautifully, even as pajamas, that created coolness and warmness and cool. And so it's a luscious, delicious fabric. But again, this mill had never, even though they've been around a long time, they had never done a project like this. So what happened is, because it was this reversible top, but if you didn't want to reverse it, and certainly the bottoms weren't reversible because they had pockets and that would be really hard. I guess you technically could, but they didn't do quality checks on the exterior. They did quality checks on the interior because that's where the work were. So what we found is there was 5% spandex in this fabric. And what we found, as I took it, as the factory, the cut and sew factory, started doing the patterns for these pajamas, they're like, hey, we're finding all of these places that we have to cut around and this is wasting fabric. I'm like, what in the world happened? So that was something I had to talk to the mill about. I'm like, you guys, I'm just like, the swatches that I had checked looked fine, but what they realized is they hadn't done a quality control check on the exterior. They did it on the interior because that's where the printing was. So that was an interesting piece in way of production, along with, again, having the words the way that they were. The first, I think, 25 sets of pajamas were printed upside down accidentally because the factory had to figure out, because again, everything was kind of from this reverse piece of having the words on the inside. So all of those pajamas couldn't be sold. So there were those pieces of production which were like, okay, and I feel that I'm a pretty good communicator, but I realized, all right, Kimberly, you have to even be better than you think you are. You have, like with these projects, you have to make sure that there is more guidance given, more like just to ask all the right questions. And certainly as a new fashion designer and a new company owner, even though I did ask a lot of questions, there were things that I had to figure out. And so now I know for the next time, I'm like, okay, this is how I can be more specific and how the questions I can ask to make sure that there is 110% clarity. So there's definitely those pieces. Something that every person who has a product or even a service has to learn how to become really good at is, how do you get your message out, right? Just because you have a great product or a great service, it doesn't mean that anyone else knows about it. And that's
key. That's key, how to get your message out.
And so we've been, working on that, and I don't have the silver bullet yet, but that's okay because you learn along the way. And I always look at the people that do buy our product or that we do collaborate with in some way. I'm like, guess what? We were able to bless them. Is it to the masses that I personally want? Not yet, but that person has a pair of pajamas or that person has a tee. And I've had people come back with stories to me about how it did uplift them, and how there was one particular mom who said that, so she had a pair of pajamas, but her teenage daughter would come home every day after school and take the pajamas and put them on. And so finally her mom was like, those are my pajamas. But what it did is, because of that, it opened up this conversation for this mom and this daughter to have about some self-worth issues that the daughter was experiencing. And I'm like, that is exactly what I want to happen because of this company. And so, again, I haven't found the magic bullet yet and way to get this in front of more people, but it's okay. Like
you're here. We're getting some of that message out here.
That's right. And I've been able to have incredible conversations with people like you, Seth, which is good. And even if someone does not go and buy a product, if they take one piece away just from this conversation of how they can modify and edify their language in a better way that helps them with greater joy and helps them with their children, to help their children understand their language, that's success. And so so you have to look at all of the little pieces along the way and give yourself grace, I think, because with entrepreneurs, we have these huge goals and we want this and this. And sometimes it's really, really easy to feel like, wow, I'm failing. Like, I haven't done this in the timeline that I gave myself, and I haven't done this. you've got to focus on how far you've come versus how far you have to go. I know the book Gap versus Gain, right? There's a difference between, we have to focus on the gains that we make, not the huge gaps. We
Not the gaps. That's right.
Focus on those gains. And again, that is a language thing, right?
Yes.
Your perspective, it changes how then what your next step is and the emotional state that you're working from when you change it from, oh, what have I failed at, the gap, to look at what I've at least been able to do and how far I've come since I started. That's the gain. And even just saying those words as I speak them, there is an energy shift in talking about failure versus talking about, what you've been able to do and what you're looking forward to.
I'm very curious, some of the people that might have been inspirational to you to help you examine, not only because due to your education, but people past or present that you've looked up to that have been inspiring to you as an entrepreneur. One of the things we at Makers Bar here do talk about is creating 1 million leaders today for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so some of those examples in my life might be my dad, or Jesus is a big one for me. And then there's some great other examples. Who were some of those examples for you?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I would say that the summary that we have certainly is Jesus, right? Just recognizing when you have that faith in him and understand what he's done for you, wanting to be able to make sure that you're trying to emulate and follow him and bring people to him and create a life where when people look at you, they want to know more about him. That is a huge piece for me. And certainly, again, that faith in him directs every single thing that I do. So there are though other people there's
for sure.
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting, and this has nothing to do with fashion, but so Seth, we'll tell your audience this. One of the reasons why I reached out to you initially on LinkedIn was because of my passion with songwriting, and that's why you remember that. And so I language and writing and being in graduate school, and I did a thesis and research and like all of that crazy technical writing that you got to do there. But I had a really fantastic teacher back in junior high school. Junior high for me was 9th grade was the top of that. And I remember this honors English class with Alan Drake, Mr. Drake. And there were only a few people because you had to have certain grades to get into this class. And it was tough. Like I'm pretty sure it was still tougher than any college English class that I ever took. But he always said, open a vein. Like we had to write as a 9th grader 2 or 3 pages every week. It was just consistent, which when you're older, that's not a big deal. But at that time, that was a bigger deal along with everything else. But I just remember that open a vein, like just let yourself write. And so that phrase that he would use and how he pushed us really actually influenced the rest of my life in multiple things, but certainly with writing and creating, which you do as an entrepreneur and certainly in the fashion world. It's a matter of, for me, that you don't have to be perfect. It can be absolutely messy. Just open that vein and let things out. And then take all that, and then you start to construct it in a way that you love. But who knew that Mr. Drake would have, his class would have such an impact that continued. Another person who was really important to me was in high school, my music teacher, Marie Dickey, who not only did we have great fun with the musicals and all of the music type of events that we did, but she also just cared about her students. And she gave fantastic education in music. And so I know that instruction and that support through years way past high school certainly helped mold me and helped me become someone who then could become an entrepreneur. My dad too, he definitely has been an entrepreneur his entire life in not fashion, but very, very different other things. In fact, what's interesting about my dad is that when I was considering whether I was going to launch this company or go to the US Virgin Islands, again, I think it was like 2021, COVID's still strong. Production costs had actually risen 60% between like the first prototype and what production would be, because of what was happening with the supply chain during COVID. Like numbers went up. I'm like, and I kind of was shocked. I'm like 60% between the mill and the cut and sew factory. And I'm like, how in the world am I going to move forward? And he said, Kimberly, And I remember where we were standing as he said this, he's like, but he just kind of looked down on the ground and goes, sometimes he goes, you come up to the cliff and you just leap.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that statement, I'm like, okay. So because he's done that, he's come up to the cliff and just leaped. And so that also has been, I think, influential and helpful. You know, Seth, and I'm sure you understand this too, is that even though I am very much right now a solopreneur, I never consider myself completely solo because there are people around me that I surround myself with, good friends, people who
Yes.
have done extraordinarily well in business, who are supportive and who are willing to help here and there and give you ideas and listen and give you feedback. All of those people are part of my team. Even though I don't pay them, they're not, you know, they're not on payroll, but they're still willing to just listen and again, give that feedback and give some of their experience. And so they also inspire and impact and shape how I move forward in business.
And it's extremely important. I always hear you, we always used to hear there's no I in team. And there's no team and I hope I said that right. But having a team of support around us is extremely important to our success as well. Those who would tell us the truth and those who are supportive of us and lend a helping hand as well. Now, I myself, as an entrepreneur and in talking to other entrepreneurs, that is one of the greatest things we can have is a team of powerful people who are not only supportive, but critical and or can examine some things objectively to assist us in our growth. What would you say was the best piece, or actually, when your dad said, just leap, is that the best piece of advice you would offer to a new entrepreneur, an up and coming entrepreneur as well? Or would you have an amendment to that?
Yeah, so I would say that is a great piece of advice. Based upon the experience over the last few years with being in business, my biggest thing I would say is just keep moving ahead or just keep going, however you want to phrase it. And I know that seems so simple, but when you look at statistics, at least here in the States, most businesses fail, right? Within the first, 6 months a year. I don't remember exactly, but it's like 80 to 90% of businesses fail. And there are reasons for that. And some of them are, all of them are obviously are legitimate, but a lot of it is that if you would just keep going. When you read or listen to some of the best entrepreneur stories in the world, people who actually finally got to the place where they could then surge forward, they were this close to quitting. Every single one of them, right? I don't think that there is an experience or a story where there was not some catastrophic thing that happened where they were down in the dumps at some point and they wanted to quit too, but they just kept going and it finally happened. And so I think that is probably the biggest piece. That doesn't mean that you sacrifice your health, that you sacrifice family, that you sacrifice your values. I don't believe in that. Maybe it means that you
that's interesting.
Right? Like, yeah, like if you're going to sacrifice all those pieces, there are sacrifices you have to make, but when you look at the things that actually keep you alive, your health keeps you alive, and you're not going to be a very good leader if you have poor health. Family and God are the most important things in this life. If you're going to shove those pieces aside, who do you become? You don't become a person that can develop an extraordinary business. And so there are certain values and certain principles that you have to hold on to. I strongly believe that as you move forward. And so as you're moving forward, you have to make sure that you're doing so without sacrificing those important things. However, you can adjust. It doesn't mean that you have to go full throttle every single month or every single year. Maybe you come back and you rethink a few things, you readjust a few things, and then you move forward. There's not a one size fits all ever. If you keep going, and that's why if you will keep going, doing something, you're going to get where you want to be.
I strongly believe that. That's also in a line. You mentioned something about failing, and this was Napoleon Hill also. He said, Thomas Edison, when reframing your thinking, Thomas Edison, he said, didn't think 10,000 times that he failed. He just thought 10,000 times it didn't work. I just keep going. And I just thought that was fascinating because I think that is a piece that's missing. You must continue to strive ahead. You must continue to strive ahead, even when you don't want it in order to become successful. That's a running thread I find in most successful entrepreneurs, you must continue. Even if one didn't work, you keep going until you find the one that does work. And that's how you become successful. And sometimes it's just a matter of just a little more, and then you're right there. Now, in that going forward, when did you find for yourself, I'm successful? Does success mean having a global brand? Was success a number of women that have written back letters to you that said how inspirational and life-changing it's been for you? Describe this when you feel you are successful.
That's a really good question. Only because I certainly, and I think this is true for all of us, I certainly struggle with feeling that on a day-to-day basis, because again, I haven't reached all of those goals that I want to be at. But
so part of it is, just a quick interruption, is so part of success is meeting the goals as well. Is that what we're going to say?
Well, I was going, so almost, I would say sometimes I look at that, okay, I'm successful if I can reach these benchmarks, right? I mean, and I have those, and we need to have the goals. However, here's what I've learned is that more than goals in business or goals in anything that we're doing in life, it is about the people that we serve and the people that we relate to and the people that we impact. And that doesn't have to be through a company. And so success has changed over the years for me, what that definition is. And it has really become, was I able to serve someone today? Was I able to lift someone? Business aside, maybe it wasn't. And that has become much more important to me in way of what success is. Does someone have a better day because of me? Does someone feel loved or a little bit happier? Were they edified in some way because I was able to do something that lifted them? That is what success is. And that's kind of an age.
And I think that actually would be one of the definitions of success. I definitely, for myself, I know when I look at the end of the day and I'm getting home and I'm trying to decompress, I like the idea of feeling successful, that if I can look back and see that I've inspired someone or helped or served someone well, and even for me, served a higher purpose, I feel that is a measurement of success. And I ask the success definition question of entrepreneurs because I do think it's a combination of those things, similar to how you said you reach certain benchmarks. But the fundamental part, you hit the nail on the head, is did I serve someone today? And I think that's an important question for us, that when we're defining success, success has a deeper meaning than just the acquisition of finances and or materials. And I think that's instrumental. And we see that in your clothing company. Success is being able to be given the gift of this idea and moving forward with it in service of others, helping others to feel good about themselves, in particular women, and our young women in particular, who need those affirmations. So and that is a successful definition, if I may play in terms with that. Now, singing, we are going to have to discuss that as well, because the lyrics is something, and we mentioned music is so near and dear to my heart. And being in the music industry for a long time, and a nightclub and so forth, I am so enthralled by your excitement about music as well. Where does that play a role for you going in these next few years? I know we've talked about doing some things. We have some secret plans we have to discuss.
That's right. Yes. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. As a speech pathologist, I use lots of children's books in therapy. I love children's books. And so several years ago, I thought during summers, as I was working in the schools, I thought, well, during the summer, I want to be able to work on children's book manuscripts because I love stories and I use them all the time in therapy. And I just love reading myself. And so
I do too.
Yeah. So I started reading or writing children's book manuscripts, took some classes. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, took some classes, did things here and there. And now I'm in Southeast Idaho, back in the Mountain West where I grew up. And I decided, I think it was probably around 5 or 6 years ago, I just thought, you know what? Instead of children's books, I wanted to focus on lyrics this summer. And so I did that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. Because I always would, write poems when I was younger. And I understand music. I understand the rhythm and the cadence and the flow because I have this rich background in music. But I also understand language better than I ever have. And guess what? The older you get, the more experiences you have, and you understand story and emotions and experiences more and more. So I started writing lyrics. I'm like, this is so fun. And this was prior to launching Token. When I came, and so that was just a year or so before Token. When I came to Token, I thought, okay, how am I going to do all of this? I was working full-time as a speech pathologist. I'm trying to launch this company. I really want to write lyrics, but I thought, I prayed about it. I'm like, all right, God, like I need to be given some direction here because I know I can't do all of this even as much as I want to. I just know that things are going to fall if I do this. And I felt strongly that lyrics needed to be placed gently to the side and for me to focus on Token and keep making a living as a speech therapist. And so I put those things to the side, and I don't know, some months ago, I felt strongly it's time to bring this back out. And I have been vigilantly writing almost every single day. And it's crazy how many songs I've been able to do in the last few months. And again, though, I'm at a different place. Like I'm at a different place as a person. There is more understanding about life to me and hardship and obstacles, which to have great story, you've got to have those. And to me, the best song music has the best. When we think about lyrics, I was like, there has to be excellent story that moves people. I mean, the music, the instrumentation is incredibly important, but you have to have the words that actually tell a story. So it's been kind of this journey. But you asked, where do I want to go with this? Now that I'm back into this, and I just see, when you look at the passions that I have, speech pathology has nothing to do with a fashion company. So you think a fashion company has nothing to do with song lyrics. So you think, but at the center of all of this is excellent language, right? It's communication and language. And I'm just like, everything about me is words. And so I hope, of course, this is what I hope, is to be able to work with songwriting teams that produce some of the best music in the world, right? I'm not, even though I have that background in music, I don't compose music. That is left to other people who have that extraordinary talent. But I can come in and be part of that team in creating the story that is there to share with the music. And that lifts and that edifies. Again, it's all about, a rising tide lifts all boats. That is what we are here to do.
Oh, I love that.
The world needs more light. And so
yes.
we can bring light to it always through language. And of course, music is, I don't even have to tell you, right?
We've discussed it is, I find it's not, it just fits in so many different places. And I've often thought about, I don't know one person if they're diagnosed with developmental disabilities to what are considered the normies. I don't know a person living that music does not have a significant influence on our mood, our attitudes, our motivation, our sadness. I just don't know where it doesn't impact. And along with words, for me as a word person, the impact of those words put to melody, there's just this incredible spiritual connection that music does in uplifting us and really having us come into a moment of presence. I often find myself becoming very present when a really good song with incredible lyrics is on. And so, yes, we definitely, combined with Token Clothing and our appreciation for love of music, we definitely have some things to talk about. And in particular, as a speech and language pathologist working with young people as well, those are all things in my desire I see in the next few years continuing to be involved with. So I'm looking forward to us doing that, because I think that we who connect and see words as significant and empowering other people, there is something of a connection where we can put those together to further promote the cause of uplifting and edifying. And that's my goal.
Yeah, I love that. Yep.
Absolutely. And so tell us, where in 5 years from now, Token Clothing is where?
All over the world, right?
Right. Oh, yes.
Yes, we've partnered with other companies who have presence in different countries, and we're being able to take our product and put it in the languages of the people who live there in those parts of the world, so those messages can be communicated accurately to them, right? I am loved, I am beautiful, I am divine, whatever else we do. So certainly we're further down the road with more products, but those products are now being put into other languages, and we're able to have a presence throughout the world. And people know that our brand is all about positivity, that is all about lifting, right? That the experience that they receive when they buy a product, when they come to our website, that they're going to feel great and they're going to feel good and they're going to have the opportunity to share that light through what they're wearing with those people around them.
That's incredible. Well, Kimberly Wilkerson, where can people find more information about you and in order to get in touch with you? I know you and I are going to be in constant communication, but what are the sites and areas where people can reach to you for more information and to see about your clothing?
Sure. So I would say come to tokenclothingco.com. Again, that's www.tokenclothingco.com. And on that site, you can link to Pinterest. We're on Pinterest. We're on Instagram. And you can also, we have a blog that we do every month that talks about some of the things that we've discussed today and is all about strategies that lift and edify and all about truth, beauty, goodness, and excellence. That is what that blog is about. And so
I love the way you said that. That's just perfect.
Yeah, you can connect with us on that blog. And again, everything, if you just come to that site, you'll see everything that you need to see and the link for Pay It Forward with Pajamas as well.
Well, Kimberly Wilkerson, thank you so much for being on my program today and being here with Makers Bar, inspiring other entrepreneurs and women who are looking forward to try and establish something, being an example of edification as well. We thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. If you're enjoying the content and the guests that we have on Makers Bar and on our program today, please do support, check out their sites and their information so you can learn more about Token Clothing and our guest, Kimberly Wilkerson, today. As I've mentioned, love is the revolution we want, so let's start a love-olution. If you enjoy the content here, please press like, subscribe, and share. Be good to each other today and tomorrow. We love you, good people. Until next time. And Kimberly, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.